You lived for some time in Montreal. You were principal of McGill University, and while you were there, you were co-chair of the No campaign.
Yes, Leslie.
What did that mean for you?
Well, I love Canada, and I had just finished 3 5-year terms as principal and vice chancellor, president of McGill in 1994, and as university head, it was not possible for me to be directly involved in politics, but when I stepped down, it was. And I guess I was driven by the sense of this marvelous country breaking up. I also wrote a book at that time with Marcel Côté called If Quebec Goes, The Real Cost of Separation. And it came about in a very interesting way. Marcel, like I, loved Canada. He grew up in northern Quebec and I grew up in northern Ontario, and we had a dinner one night. And he was saying, "What will you do if Quebec goes, Dave?" And I said, "Well, I'll finish my term as principal of the university, of course, but I'll return to my country, which is Canada. What will you do, Marcel?" He says, "Well, I'll have to stay in my country." And I thought, how sad that two people that love this country as much as we do would actually cease to be brothers in the same country. And Marcel had begun a script in French, looking as impassionately as possible at what would the consequences be of separation. And so I took that beginning of the script and with my children translated the French into English. My children's French is much better than mine. And then we turned it into a dialogue between Marcel and myself of two friends. And we looked at things like what would happen to the national debt of Canada if separation occurred. Well, Quebec would assume 25 to 29% of that debt, whatever formula you use for its population, and would cover the interest payments, but the guarantee of the principal would be a Canadian guarantee, and it would certainly cause our debt cost to rise in Canada and Quebec's debt cost to very, very large numbers. And that would be something that would not be well understood in the rest of Canada, that Canada would be assuming that debt of the new nation. So we tried to explore questions like that. And alas, the book sold very poorly in French. And of course, we were writing it for a French-speaking Canadians who would be looking at both sides of this question. It actually sold well in English Canada, but those were people who I think were already reasonably convinced of the arguments. So that was the story of that book. The No campaign was, well, we came so close to losing something very beautiful. And I think the lesson I drew from that was never be indifferent about a country as precious as Canada and work every day to make it understood how blessed we are and how fortunate we are to live in this country and to make it better for people who come after, including our French-speaking citizens as well.
There's certainly a possibility that there could be a PQ government in Quebec again, which means possibly a third referendum. Hard to believe, but do you see that possibly happening in the near future?
I guess we're venturing onto that territory that is probably one where I have to be a little careful in pronouncements at this time. So I'll simply say that I hope that the vast majority of Canadians in every part of this country, from whatever language, are so convinced of the blessedness of this country that we will not want to face questions of considering its breakup.
Someone described you, I think, as an extreme federalist. Maybe even extremist federalist. Is that accurate?
I don't think I'd use the word extreme in very many things about me. Certainly not on questions that have to do with rule of law matters, because the rule of law is a very intricate, complex set of balances. I guess I am an extreme believer in the rule of law, but within the rule of law, one is always looking at calibration. For example, if I were to start a law school tomorrow, and maybe that's what I'll do when I next have an opportunity, above the doors, one would see the concept of justice in law. And the question that I would ask my students each day is law just? Or more specifically, is this particular law just? And to be able to answer that question, you must understand this particular law, how it came about, does it work, and does it meet your concept of justice? And you must have that concept of justice as well. And so when you ask questions like that, I think extremes move out and one is looking for calibration where you have values that are there to be recognized and placed in some sort of context.